and welcome back to the part 2 of our tutorial series where you will be learning how to build a tower defense game with the Unreal Engine. So far, you've learned how to make the enemy sprite. In this episode, you will learn how to build an enemy spawner, create a path marker system, and create the logic that makes the spawn enemy follow that path. And if you haven't joined our Discord yet, what are you doing? Go join right now, links in the description. This is a long episode, so I'm not gonna waste your time anymore. I will let Marcelo continue with the tutorial, and I will see you in the end.
Right now, we have our enemies, but they don't do anything. They just stay there without doing anything, just playing his sprite shit. So let's change that. So first, in our materials folder, let's create a new material. Let's call it m underscore path marker. We are going to be using this material to show where the enemies will be moving towards. So the first thing we want to do is to change its blend mode to be translucent, and then from its emissive color we just want to pull a new color. So we are going to press 3 and then click, so we have a new color, pull it to the emissive color, and let's make this color green, like this. Just save, that's all this material needs to be. And now, inside of our enemies folder, let's create a new folder called AI. And inside of here, we are going to create a new actor that we'll be using for the enemies AI. So open a new blueprint class, choose an actor, and let's call it BP path marker. Inside of it, we are going to add a new cylinder. Well, there's no cylinder here, of course not. Oh, here, cylinder. And we are going to make it small. Let's say its scale being 1, 1, and 0.1. That way he's not very large. And in its material, we are going to be putting our m underscore path marker and compile. And one more thing on collision. We want to change our collision preset to be no collision. We don't want it to be colliding with anything. No collision is still blocking. Let's set default, not default, custom, and just set everything to ignore. We don't want it to collide with anything, because our enemies will be pathing through it, so we don't want them to just be hitting it every time they try to go through it. So now we can put these path markers around the map to define the enemy's movement. For now, they don't do anything because the enemy doesn't know about them and they don't know about enemies. So let's create a new class. It's going to be an actor again, and this is going to be our BP enemy spawner. This guy is going to be spawning enemies for us and telling them where to move. Let's open it. Right now it has nothing. So first thing, let's add a new component to it, and this component is going to be a box component, box collision component. A box collision is, as you can imagine, a little box here that we can see, and whenever anything's inside of it, we will know. It will let us know something entered it. So for now, compile it. The reason why we are adding this box is to check if the enemy that we spawned has already moved out of its area, so we can add a new one. We are going to be adding a few variables to this guy. The first one is a path that it will be sending our enemies in. And our path, its type is BP path marker, object reference, but it's an entire path, not only one marker. So we want to make it an array instead of a single. That will make it multiple variables at the same time. Next, we need a bool variable called wave spawn finished, which will be a boolean and not an array, just a single boolean. The idea being that this variable is going to let us know if we need to continue spawning enemies or not. We need a current wave, which is an integer, just a single integer as well. We need a num of spawned enemies, which is an integer as well. All of these variables that we are setting up right now will be used in the logic of spawning the enemies. We need our latest spawn, which is an actor, so it's actually a BP enemy, not an actor, so enemy. It's a class object BP enemy. Then we need an array of spawn enemies, which is a BP enemy as well, but this time it's an array of them. So these will be all the enemies that we have spawned in the current wave. And last thing, we need a timer. This timer will be the timer between waves, which should be a float. Now there is one more thing we are missing, but that is a structure, not just a variable. So we need to create a structure first. So here, go to Blueprint and create a blueprint structure here. And let's call this BP spawner data. And inside of here, what we are going to have is a BP enemy, but this time we want a class reference. This will be the enemy class. The second variable we want is integer, just a normal integer. That will be our num enemies, which will be the amount of enemies that the wave will spawn. And the last thing we want is a float, which will be our wave timer, so the starting timer of the wave. Now we save this, we go back to our enemy spawner, and we are going to add another variable. This variable being from our type BP spawner data, and we want it to be an array. By the way, this timer here is supposed to be a single, not an array. I just saw that I forgot to change it. Okay, now that we have all of our variables set up, we are going to start writing the logic for our spawning. So we are going to go to the event graph, and let's start with our begin play. So whenever our game starts, we want to set the timer of our first wave. So you're going to get our wave, get 0, and then we are going to split the struct spin. So we can see here we have all of the variables from our struct. And from here, we are going to set the timer to be the wave timer. That's all we are doing on our begin play right now. And then our logic for spawning will happen mostly on the tick function. So the first thing we need is a function to check if the timer is 0. So let's say timer is 0. And this function is going to have a Boolean output, is 0. And for it, we are just going to pull get timer smaller or equal to 0, and then set that to the output. And this function should be pure, a pure function here. That makes so that the function doesn't require a execution pin. So from here, we are going to pull a branch, and if it's true, we are going to check if our wave spawn is finished. So another branch here. So we check if the wave spawn is finished. If it is finished, we are going to check if our list of enemies, of spawned enemies, is empty as well. So we want to pull from spawn enemies length, and that will be the amount of enemies inside of this list. And from here, we want to pull smaller or equal to 0. It would never be smaller, but just in case, you never know, things can bug. And we are going to pull another branch from here. So the idea so far is we check if the timer is 0, if the wave has finished, and if the wave has finished spawning, we check if all the enemies of the wave have died. If all the enemies of the wave have died, we are going to pull another function that will be next wave. For now, let's just leave it empty and let's just pull it here. So next wave can just be here, true. If it's false, we don't want to do anything. We want to wait until they die. Now, if we still have not finished spawning, we have other things that we need to do. So first, if we have not finished spawning, we want to check if our little box component is empty. So get overlapping actors, and we can set here BP enemy. Then we get the length, and again we check if it's smaller or equals to 0. That will be a branch. And here we are checking if we are overlapping something on our little box here on top of our actor. If we are overlapping something, we want to do nothing. If we are not overlapping, so if it's false, we want to spawn the enemies, which will be another function. So spawn enemy. which for now we also keep it empty. So we spawn our enemy, take a small delay so it can properly be initialized. Our delay, let's say 0.15. Then we are going to start that enemy's AI after it's being properly initialized. So that will be another function that for now it's also going to be empty. We'll be creating all of these functions. Don't worry. Then our spawned enemies, we want to add our current latest spawned enemy, which we'll be using inside of these two functions. Then we also want to do our latest spawn on destroy, bind event to on destroyed, and we are going to pull up a new event. So we are just going to add a custom event. This custom event will be on enemy destroyed, and we are going to pull here the destroyed actor. We need to cast to BP enemy, and then all we want to do is remove it from spawned enemies. So get remove item, we pull him, and like this. This cast should never fail because this should always be, the latest spawn should always be an enemy. So we are not going to handle this, no reason for it. And then the last thing we want to do is check if our wave spawning is finished, and that will be another function. Wave spawn finished. Check wave spawn finished. And that will be this logic of spawning. And now the last thing, if our timer is not 0, we just want to reduce our timer. So we can just go to set timer, connect it to the false, then we get timer, and we do timer minus delta seconds and pull it to timer. That way, we'll just be reducing the timer if it is false, and that's all we want to do. Now we need to create our functions. Let's start with next wave. So the logic for next wave is we are going to start by getting our current wave and doing plus plus. What this does is it increases it by 1. So our current wave was 0, now it would be 1. If it was 1, now it will be 2, and so on and so forth. Then we are going to do a branch. And this branch is going to be checking if our current wave is bigger than our number of waves. So waves length, and then current wave smaller than wave stock length condition. So here we are just checking if our waves have our current wave. If it does have, we're going to get wave, get a ref from our current wave. We are going to break this down, split the struct bin, and then here we are going to set the timer to be the wave timer. We are going to get our number of spawned enemies and set it to 0. And we are going to get our wave spawn finish and set it to false. That's all this is going to be doing. So we increase the current wave, check if it exists, we set the timer, and then set the wave finish spawn to 0 and the enemies to 0. Next, let's go to our spawn enemy function. So our spawn enemy function, we are going to start by spawn actor from class. The class is going to be our current wave class. Since we are going to be getting our current wave a lot, let's make a function for it. Get current wave, which will have an output of spawner data, and it's going to return our wave get ref current wave, and we just return that value. And we want to make this function pure, so it doesn't need an execution pin. Now back to our spawn enemies, we are going to get our current wave, split the spin, pull up the class, and for the spawn transform, we are going to be get actor transform. This will give the position, rotation, and location of our actor here, our default actor. And from the return value, we are going to set it to be our latest spawn. So set latest spawn to be our return value here. That's it for this function, for spawning the enemy. Now let's deal with our next function, which would be start AI. To start AI, we need, well, to create the AI for our enemies, because currently they do not have one. They don't have a controller. So let's do that. Let's create a blueprint class, a controller, AI controller. Let's call it BP enemy controller. And in our BP enemy controller, we want to add variables. First variable will be our spawner, which will be of type BP enemy spawner object reference. And we will need an integer as well, which will be our move index, which will be an integer. Okay, now that we have created our controller for the enemies, we need to let the enemies know that. So open BP enemy and search for controller, and we'll see the AI controller class. We want to change that to our BP enemy controller. So whenever it's created, it uses this AI controller instead of just the standard AI controller. For now, we are not going to be doing anything else with this enemy controller here. But we want to create our behavior tree and our BB, Blackbird. So go to artificial intelligence, create a Blackboard, name it BB enemy, and again in artificial intelligence, behavior tree, and call it BT enemy. Now, if we open them, they will be pretty empty. First thing we want to do is on our BB, we want to set an extra key. It's going to be a vector, and is going to be our move location. Now, the BB is just a place where you can put variables for your AI, and the behavior tree is the actual AI tasks, the place where your AI is going to actually work. You can see here that the behavior tree and the Blackbird are linked because they have the same name. They automatically linked. And in our behavior tree, we want to pull up a sequence. Sequence just, well, as it says, a sequence. So everything we put below it is going to be done in sequence. So first, we want to create our own task. So what we want to do is none of these standard tasks. So what we want to do here is inside of our AI, you want to create a blueprint, and it's going to be a task, and we can see BT task node or BT task blueprint base. So we are going to be picking up our BT task blueprint base, and we are going to call it BP define next point. For now, we are just going to save it and use it inside of here. We are going to put its proper logic later. So we can see here that now we have BP define next point inside of our tasks, and we can just call it. And then the other thing we're going to do is move to, and in our move to, we are going to, my details panel was not here. If yours is also not there, you can go to Window and click here in Details, and then it will show up. As mine was like this before, you go to Window, Details, and then you can see the Details panel. We need to see it because we want to change the move to from self actor to move location, which will be defined inside of here later. Now back to our enemy spawner on our start AI. What we are going to do is we are going to get our latest spawn, get the controller, and cast it to BP enemy controller. And from here, we are going to set its spawner to be this. So we are going to write here self, get reference to self, and just pull from there. And then the second thing we're going to do is still on our enemy controller, we are going to run a behavior tree, and this behavior tree will be our BT enemy. That's all we are going to be doing inside of here. We spawn, we just get our latest spawn, cast its controller to enemy controller, set the spawner to be our current BP spawner, and then we run this behavior tree that we just created. For our next function, we are going to be doing the check wave is finished. The check wave is finished. We are going to first get our number of spawned enemies, and we are going to do a plus plus again, because we just spawned an enemy. So the first thing we're going to be doing here is telling the function, hey, we just spawned one extra enemy. After that, we are going to do a branch. If our number of spawned enemies is greater or equals to our current wave, number of enemies, new param. Let's change that real quick. In our get current wave, instead of new param, let's just return current wave. That will make it a little bit easier to read stuff like this. Current wave, yeah. So from here we will pull our branch. If the number is bigger than the total number, we want to do our wave spawn finish, and we want to set it to true. Otherwise, we don't want to do anything with it. And that should be all of our functions. Yes, that's all of our functions. So we save and compile. And now you're going to do our BT task here, the one that's inside of our behavior tree. Let's change it. So first things first, we want to add a variable to it. This variable is going to be the location, and it is a blackboard key selector. Okay, after we do that, we want to do execute. So event receive execute, we want to call that. And then we want to get our owner actor cast to BP enemy controller. And then from here, we want to get the spawner, get spawner. And from it, we want to get the path. Then from the path, we want to get a copy of our index, get our move index. So basically, we are asking the controller what is the current index of their path. And then from this value here, we want to get the actor location. Get actor location. And this location is what we are going to be setting here on this blackboard key. So our location blackboard key, we are going to set blackboard value as a vector. Set the vector here. Pull all the way from here our execution pin. And then we are going to take our BP enemy controller. We are going to do move index plus plus to increase its move index. And then after that, we are going to call finish execute. And we are going to return success. Okay. And that should be it for the basis of our AI. So now we should test it. So on our level 1, we are going to go to enemies, get enemy spawner, place it down here. In our enemy spawner, we are going to change its path. First, we need to make the path instance editable, so we can actually see it here. So now we can see the path here. So we're going to take this path and add all of our little markers here. Let's move them a little bit apart. So you can see them moving around them. And the second thing, we also need to make our wave instance editable. So we can change it here as well. So now we come to our wave and we are going to add one wave of goblins. Let's say 3 goblins. And the wave timer, let's just say 1 for starters. And now we run. And in about 1 second, they should start spawning. Oh, actually one more thing before we start. We need a nav mesh. Nav mesh bounce volume. Otherwise, our AI cannot move. It needs a nav mesh to be able to move. So here, if we go to show and we add navigation, now we can see we have a little navigational area here for our AI to do. So now they should be able to move. I just noted a small mistake on my part. This is supposed to be true, not false. So if we try to run now, they should be spawning. But not moving, of course. Let's do this. Well, they were not moving because we forgot to change this. So go to your BP, define next point, change location variable to be instance editable, and then go to your BT enemy, and in location, set move location. And now they should walk. Or not. Okay, after a little bit of debugging, I noticed that the Goblin controllers were not showing up. So I came here and in the auto possess AI, I changed it from placing road to spawned. That should solve the problem. So if you run now, you see the goblins running very fast between the points. And then having some issues because they don't know where to go now. But that's it for our basic AI. We'll be working a little bit more on it. Before we continue, there is one more change we need to make. We have changed the AI possession for the goblin, but not for the BP enemy. So whenever we create a new child from enemy, it will have the same bug as we just had with the goblin. So let's search here for uh, possess, and then set it to be when spawned. That should fix the same problem that the goblin had, but for every single child of enemy whenever we create them. And now the second thing we need to do is to fix our little goblins, because as we can see, they face the direction that they're going to move to, and that's not what we want them to be doing. So let's go to our goblin and go to control, and let's take out user controller rotation all, and that will make so that they always face this general direction of our camera. Now that those two things are solved, let's create our finish line, because right now our goblins walk to the third point and then they walk randomly to somewhere else, and we receive a lot of error messages. So to fix that, we are going to create our finish line. So inside of our enemies folder, let's create a new blueprint class. It's going to be an actor, and we are going to call it pp finish line. Inside of here, let's add a box component, box collision, set the box collision to be a bit up. This should be fine. Let's make it a bit bigger, like 45, not 15, by 45, compile. And then we can place it here on our last location, our last movement location. Now, what will our little finish line here do is, on our box component, we're going to scroll all the way down, and here we have some functions. On the component begin overlap, we are going to be adding a new function. On our component begin overlap, let's pull from actor and call it and cast it to BP enemy. That way, we are going to check if what is overlapping with us is an enemy. And if it is, we are just going to destroy the actor. So if our enemy got here, they will destroy the actor, and that's it. And then after we destroy our enemy, we want to do damage to the player. But right now we don't have that functionality, so let's create that real quick. So let's create a new folder. I'll call it game mode. And inside of here, we are going to create a new blueprint class, and we are going to create a game mode base. I'll call it BP Medieval Conquest Game Mode. And we'll be using this little game mode here for our levels. So we can come here on our level and we can change the game mode from game mode base on the project settings to be BP Medieval Conquest Game Mode. And in our little game mode here, we are going to create a new variable, which I will call player health, and it's going to be an integer. Now this player health, I will make it private. I don't want other classes to be able to willy-nilly deal with it. And I'm going to set its default value to be 10. Then we need an event dispatcher that will be called on player take damage. And this event dispatcher here is going to have here, it's going to have a new parameter, which is an integer, and it will be our health. We'll be calling this whenever our player takes damage to make so that we don't need to be adding things here. For example, our UI later, we want to know what's the player health. We don't want to be adding in the game mode to say, hey, go there and change the UI health. So the UI is going to be binded to this dispatcher later. Anyway, and then we are going to create a function which will be deal damage to player. Player. And all it's going to do is it's going to take our player health minus with decrement int. And after that, we are going to be calling our event dispatcher with the value of our new health after the minus. And this will deal with anything that requires to know what's our current health. Okay, and that should be the end of this AI part.
Whoa, that was a lot. But I hope you enjoyed learning how to create an enemy spawner. In the next episode, you will learn how to set up the landscape where you can design the levels and create the towers to damage the enemies. And once again, if you haven't joined our Discord, the link is in the description. You can also join our subreddit and follow us on Instagram where we post more content. And as always, thank you for watching and we will see you in the next one.